A new era is underway in Washington, but on day one, things got off to a sour start. In a quick turnaround, a GOP-backed amendment to make sweeping changes to the Office of Congressional Ethics was swiftly withdrawn after a wave of criticism. Joining me now is attorney Wendy Patrick, an ethics professor at San Diego State University. Welcome back, Wendy, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Before the amendment was withdrawn, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi released a statement on Monday saying evidently ethics are the first casualty of the new Republican Congress. But Democrats weren't the only ones crying foul, right?
That's right. And let's just start by pointing out that everybody believes that ethics are vitally important in Congress. So the arguments pro and con around this surprise amendment in the terms of some was not let's never talk about doing something like this, but let's not have it sprung upon us in a manner in which we don't have sufficient time to debate the pros and cons of not so much gutting, but changing the procedural structure of the way ethics complaints go from the public to those who make those very important decisions within Congress. So it had more to do with the procedure rather than simply should we no longer care about ethics. And I think that's important because depending on what news reports you were listening to or watching on Twitter, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the proposal sought to accomplish in the first place.
And it might be dependent on who's talking about it and bringing this idea to the table. According to Politico, the idea to gut the OECE was proposed by several members of Congress who felt they had been wrongfully accused by the OCE. One of those was Texas Representative Blake Farenthold. In 2014, he was accused by a former staffer of sexual harassment. The staffer said she was fired after she complained about it. Her lawsuit was eventually tossed out, but Farenthold reportedly did not like the way the case was handled by the OCE.
There are many similarities when you see restructuring proposals like this one, and part of that has to do with what you mentioned. They're due process concerns. We want to make sure that it's a watchdog agency, not a witch hunt. Now, no one knows the merits of any particular case except those intimately involved, but the greater concern is just that ethics complaints are taken seriously, that they are treated fairly, and that due process is afforded every step of the way. And no doubt those, and it's not just this Congressional Ethics Committee, but ethics committees across the country want to make sure that anybody accused of a complaint, whether it comes from a staffer or a member of the public, whether it's received confidentially or anonymously, is granted the same measure of due process. So those are some of the concerns that are generated when you see proposals like this to have a second look at the structure, the procedure with which ethics complaints are handled.
And a lot of people are questioning, should they be allowed to submit anonymous complaints?
That's right. And the reason that's such a touchy subject is anybody can say anything. And if those types of anonymous, non-vetted allegations are made public, there can be some backlash. There can be, and we've all seen how vehemently the court of public opinion attacks certain people arrested, tried, and convicted before a case ever gets to the court of law. That's a valid concern in a fast-moving, instant gratification world of social media. And lawmakers and public members alike want to make sure that not everything is out there for all to see without any kind of safeguards in place. And that's one of the reasons that this type of proposal, not maybe this one in particular, but this type of proposal is not necessarily a bad idea to consider, but the method with which it's considered. And certainly something like this has to be made available way before it actually goes public. And so lawmakers can weigh in both pro and con. It's got to be subject to vigorous debate. So what we've seen in the last couple of days is not that we're never going to do this, but that it's going to be done in a fashion where everybody gets notice that this is the kind of thing that's going to be looked at and argued on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And going back to those anonymous complaints, we can't forget about attorney fees. You know, when you've got to protect yourself against all these various allegations, it can get pretty costly.
Danielle, that is a huge part of this. It is very, very costly to hire an attorney to defend against allegations, some of which may have great merit, some of which might be baseless. But there has to be a vetting process in place to where you don't have somebody spending inordinate amounts of money defending baseless lawsuits. Now, lawyers aren't allowed to file meritless lawsuits, but there should be more vetting even than that before somebody is able to make this kind of a complaint. So that is some of the background that shows why this kind of a measure would be considered to begin with.
Wendy Patrick, thanks so much for weighing in tonight.
Thank you for having me.